Welcome to a football show Thursday edition. That is Nick Suss. I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Look, you can get this really cool barrel pick right here. I'll tell you about that coming up in just a second, but I just went by and picked up my barrel pick there. We've got a lot of stuff to do today on the show. Brian Daboll, Gus Bradley introduced as the new Tennessee Titans coordinators. What did we learn? What does it all mean? Nick Suss, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm surprised that I got off mute in time to figure out how to use the internet and work these contraptions that we're dealing with. But yeah, I'm good. If my voice sounds weak, it is, but we're going to talk for an hour and that always solves everything.
What, are you okay? Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, a little under the weather over the weekend, but you make it through.
Heard. All right, so we've got some clips for you guys. We're gonna play Brian Daboll's introductory statement, which is sort of, hey, what have you guys been doing lately? What is it that you say you do here? We'll do that, and then of course a question about sort of why the Tennessee Titans were the right fit, which then he gets into the answer about scouting Cam. I almost said Cam Newton, scouting Cam Ward. In terms of what he liked from him, and then we'll get into how he views Cam Ward currently after a year in the NFL. What does he need to work on? Then we'll get into Gus Bradley. And I thought, and you kind of followed up on this, and I think he answered a question. It might actually have been your question in your own follow-up, but basically, how and why do Robert Saleh and Gus Bradley fit together so well? Lots of head coaches on this coaching staff. One of the most experienced coaching staffs I've ever seen in Nashville. So we'll get into that to start here. Sinkers Beverages, by the way, make sure you check them out. Of course, our wonderful and amazing sponsor. Again, things like a Weller 107 barrel pick, which if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc., you can get into the comment section and you can see stuff like this, and you can direct some of the show. But this is the kind of thing you only get if you are signed up for the in-crowd. So you sign up for their sort of customer appreciation group. They're not going to hit you with a bunch of promotional emails and text messages. They don't do any of that political nonsense. Every couple of months, maybe 2 or 3 a year, they're going to send you something and say, hey, we've got a delicious bottle, a barrel pick that's got your name on it, and it's behind the counter, and we're not going to sell it to anybody else, so why don't you come pick it up? And that's what you get to do. You get a Weller 107 with your name on it, basically, Nick. So it's very customizable. It's very cool. I appreciate Sinkers Beverages.
Bespoke.
Yeah, yes, yeah. That's exactly right. Goforth says Daboll far superior to Holtz. Now, look, here's the deal. I want to start before we. How about this? Let's play his introductory comments here, and then we can sort of analyze the psychology of the press conference and the psychology of the coaching staff first. Compare and contrast, as it were, as the folks in the comments already are. So here was what has Brian Daboll been up to? What's the coaching staff been up to the last few weeks? This was his opening statement on Wednesday's press conference.
We've done a lot of things, starting with hiring the coaching staff. Feel very good about the guys we brought offensively, some of which were with me, some of which were here already with the Titans, and then a couple other pieces that have been on some other teams. We met with Borgo and his staff and went kind of through the evaluation processes of some of the things that we're looking for, position specific, not to get too deep into the weeds with scheme. So those have been productive. We've met, all morning, every day with the offensive coaches. And when you're installing a new system, the biggest thing is to make sure that we're communicating the same way and understanding the language that we're going to use. That's been productive. We've watched a lot of tape on installations of runs, on passes, on RPOs, on move the pockets. But again, we're a little bit far away from the scheme conversation. It's just the communication aspect of it. How do we call a double team? What's the quarterback signals look like? So those have been productive. And then in the afternoon, we spent a lot of time on free agents and getting, accustomed to what's going out there in the market that will be available here shortly. So it's been a good 3 weeks. It's been a lot of work.
There you go. That's what he's been up to, Nick. Lots of talk about. There was lots of allusions to free agency and moves they're going to make, and they're not talking about the roster and they're not talking about scheme. But I think the thing I wanted to play that for you, and I'm not going to play Gus's introductory statement. I don't know how long it was, but
I don't think he gave one.
Yeah, I don't think he did either. And I think at the end of the day, I wanted people to see how he just sort of approaches things. This is clearly a guy who's been in football for almost 30 years, in the NFL for almost 30 years, and has been a head coach very, very recently, of course, the last few seasons for the New York Giants. Gus Bradley's been a head coach. I think that's I didn't think Nick Foles was unprepared or ill-equipped to handle questions. I think he's very comfortable. He's a chatter. He moves a mile a minute, but I think Daboll and Gus, I think the broad takeaway is like these guys are real polished. They're real prepared. They're very experienced, and hopefully that translates on the football field.
Yeah, look, these were introductory press conferences where both guys had no intention of saying anything that would translate to September, and because they barely had any intention of saying anything that translated to March. So
April, they were focused on April. Can't wait to get to April. Can't wait to get to April.
So based on that, it's hard to sit here and be like, oh, they crushed this, because things were very vague. Things were very protected. We can criticize the last 2 years of Titans football all that we want. Those Tuesday assistant coach press conferences were actually very strong, very informative, very illuminative week after week after week. I give Holtz and Denard Wilson and John Fossil, who's obviously returning, a lot of credit for the way that they dealt with us in those press conferences. But yeah, I think it was, I'm trying to remember who it was in the press conference. I think it was Corey Curtis at one point who just kind of blurted out, well, you still seem like a head coach when talking to Daboll. And yeah, that is functionally how it felt. That's a guy who knows how to command a room as a head coach. That is a guy who, to some degrees, is talking like he still intends to be a head coach someday. And yeah, there was some vagueness. There was some incompleteness where there were 3 or 4 questions in a row that he sidestepped for the sake of not wanting to give a full answer on things that I believe people will care about and do already care about, but none of that is negative so much as it was February the 18th. And I do believe them. I grant them the fact that I believe them when they say, hey, the scheme's not done yet, so I'm not going to define it. And
I actually didn't think that was evasive at all. I think it's just like, we're not there yet. We're still analyzing. He later on in the press conference talked a little bit about sort of like how they spent some time to yesterday, like on goal line situations in terms of, so like they've just got, imagine the number of scenarios in a football game and the different packages and formations and plays that you have to now evaluate. I have these 37 pass plays with this particular route tree on the left side. I now have to go watch film on 12 players and how they run the routes in that route tree on these, in every possible scenario, goal line all the way out to midfield to 3rd and long. And I've got to figure out, like, you are doing as much diligence in terms of evaluating your own roster as possible. I don't like, I think there'll be some insight into that, I think, later on when we played some of the comments about Cam. Eddie says, very excited that Borgo is officially a nickname. I did notice, and I think Corey picked up on this too, the way he was talking in that opening clip was very much about running an organization, big picture stuff. You know, it's like, it's free agency, it's the front office, it's all this stuff. And that's kind of what Corey picked up on as well. They both mentioned Borgonzi by name as a reason that they believe in this thing that's happening here in Tennessee. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't know what it means, but I don't think it's an accident.
No, it's really tough because one of the biggest biases here is that we follow the Titans every day. So I have no idea if in Jacksonville every single day they'll be like, oh, we believe in James. I have no idea if in Los Angeles how often Les Snead is evoked. But it does seem like, compared to Ran and compared to the last couple of years of J-Rob, Borgonzi is getting name-checked a lot more than past Titans GMs were. I don't know if that means he's more hands-on. I don't know if that means he is more mention-worthy. I don't know if they're contractually obligated to mention their boss, like in that episode of The Studio. I really do not know which it is, but...
What did you think of the camera work in that show?
I thought that episode 2 was the best episode of television I saw last year, and the rest.
Oh wow! Okay. I really like I like the show. It's not one I'm going running to tell people to go watch. My wife watched the first 10 minutes of it with me, and has come back to it recently and been like, I really want to watch that. And I'm like, sweetie, that's the one you turned off after 10 minutes because you couldn't handle the camera work.
Yeah.
So she was like, that's what it was. Oh, I really want to watch that. I'm like, well, you're gonna have to deal with the camera work. Anyway, it is very herky jerky, but I enjoyed it. Sergeant Bubbles to the main stage. Daboll been dealing with New York media for years, commanded his press conference. Look, first of all, I just got to say, because I did see a lot of this on socials, I think it's fair to look at these guys and be like, yeah, you know what? They're pretty polished, and they've clearly been head coaches, and they know how to answer questions. That's a totally fair analysis. But my God, the media, myself, not necessarily me personally, but like our profession, we are such cheap dates. You flirt with us one time, and we will put out. That is how the press works. And in an industry of cheap dates, Nashville's even cheaper. And that's not a knock on anybody. That's not an attack on anybody. It's just like it doesn't take a lot of effort for a person that we cover, any sport. If you just put in a little effort, you can win them over quickly. They'll turn on you fast too, but you can win the media over pretty quickly with just a minimal amount of effort.
Sure, but I do think that's not to get too much on a screed about the culture of celebrity, but like that's just flattery. Like people, it's very easy to be like, oh, that person was so nice to me because they looked at you. So like, again, we can talk about the nice guy era that Swedish Dance Party's alluding to in the comments. Yeah, the previous coaches were very nice and kind. And then Gus Bradley comes in and talks about how his general disposition is being 85 and sunny all the time. Like, that sounds pretty nice guy to me.
Brian Daboll even acknowledged, I think it's pretty well documented that I get heated at times.
Yeah. It's like,
what I mean is that flattery seems to work. Like the basic, most bare minimum amount of attention, using people's names, and all of a sudden, oh, this guy cares about us. And like, it's because the situation is sort of designed with tension, even if it's not like, even if it's not interpersonal tension, that there is an element of we are trying to protect all of our state secrets and you're trying to figure them all out. That is the nature of the relationship. So if you just sort of like, just kind of give us a little more, so man, do we put out fast? And I'm including myself in I'm not the media writ large, not any one person or whatever. That's all.
Sure.
That's all.
But football. Football related.
Yeah, you want to talk
you got
about
a clip you want to show?
No, I want to talk about media.
Okay.
I thought the fawning over how well they handled the press conferences was a little silly, but like whatever.
I did not see any fawning because as some people might know about me, I'm not really doing a lot of reading on social media about how coaches did in the press conferences. I came out of it thinking neither of them said anything particularly illuminating.
Yeah,
I came out of it thinking that both of them are going to be good at answering questions that sound like they were complete answers. And then you listen back and they were 85% complete answers.
It's almost like they've been head coaches before. Yeah. And maybe that's my thing is like, maybe that's, thank you for helping me drill down on my own experience here, which is like, if you execute the science of a press conference and the psychology of a press conference well, you don't have to give as much as they want you to. The media wants you to, and yet you can actually win them over faster with other things. And I think maybe that's what you're saying there in a far more articulate way. It's almost like you're a writer or something. That I think that's sort of what happened. Like PK is going to love Daboll. Sergeant Bubble says, I will stand up for PK and just say he treats everybody exactly the same. Now is a New York style reporter who just loves to be as much New York as possible all the time going to enjoy someone a little bit more who can go back and forth with him, having just been in the New York media as Daboll has been and dealing with the New York media as Daboll has done. I think that's fair. Does PK really appreciate the fact that the entire coaching staff is bald? Probably. So, all right. Now that I got that out of my system, I can tell that you want to talk about football. So let's get.
No, I'm good talking about media. It just feels like the wrong podcast. I feel like you have one of those. You have a media podcast.
I do, but this is one of the few shows, though, from a Titans perspective, and I think most of my shows, Like I think the relationship between those we cover and the people doing the covering and the audience, that big giant triangle that is a factor of content, I think it's an important relationship to understand. And as long as people understand all of the ins and outs and how the dynamics work, then I think it's easier to understand the content that we get and the headlines that we get and the stories that are told, the questions that are asked, the answers that are given.
Okay, so we'll do it this way.
Right.
In May, in June, if you guys want like journalism 301, we can teach a class on all of the lingo, all of the do's and don'ts and faux pas.
Yeah.
We'll get into it.
Okay.
We really will.
All right, so we'll do it. We got about a 2-minute clip of him talking about Cam specifically, but the intro into that, and I wanted to separate these. This was his answer when asked about sort of like, look, you were in demand. You were a coach that probably could have gone to a lot of different places, and here was his answer, which includes, of course, a reference to the past relationship with Cam.
Yeah, I'd just say it felt like the right fit with the right people. Obviously have a relationship with Robert dating back to the New York days, but his vision of what he wants to do and how he wants to do it, Mike and the vision that he has, and then ultimately Cam was a big factor. Have a lot of confidence in this young man. I'm sure I'll get asked about the pre-draft process last year, which was about this time. Had a lot of touch points with him, meetings, 30 visits, going down to Miami, dinner with him and his family. So there was a good relationship built up leading up to the draft. So I look forward to work with him. I know he's in the building rehabbing. April can't come soon enough to get going on the offensive installation part of it, but have a lot of confidence in how he played, both at Miami, Washington State. And then he had a whole year under his belt playing in the National Football League and getting accustomed to the speed of the game and the timing. And that's not an easy thing for quarterbacks. So.
All right, there you go. Talking about sort of why he came here, and that's what I want to focus on here because then he talks a little bit about Cam. Also, it sounds like Brian Daboll didn't care at all that he played at Incarnate Word. 3 times mentioned Washington State. Not one time did he mention Incarnate Word. So here's my question. I think there's layers to this, and the question is sort of like, was this about Cam? Did he? My short answer is no. I think this is about relationships, and I think it's about Cam. But I think it's about one other big thing, and that is, to your earlier point, setting himself up for the next step, which is not a bad thing. I think people hear that and they go, "Oh, Brian Daboll is just trying to rehab the image and do well in 1 year with a quarterback and a coach that he knows in a town that's not going to treat him too poorly, and he's going to make them better because they were so bad last year, and then he's going to be off and take a head coaching job." To which I say, okay, good job. Like, that's the whole point. I think he's going to be a head coach again, maybe in college, maybe in the NFL. I don't know if it's 1 year. Number one, why do you think he chose the Tennessee Titans? And there's probably more than one answer to that question. And then I think the follow-up is, what does that mean for the future?
So the shortest version that I can say is I truly do believe that him and Saleh rather, had a bit of a handshake agreement on I will go where you go type thing. I think their relationship mattered. I think that Daboll's relationship with Cam and his belief in Cam very clearly matters. It was not lost on me that most of the positive things that Daboll said about Cam Ward yesterday were the things that the previous coaching staff kind of said in a negative tense. Excuse me. I think that when you listen back, it was, man, what makes this guy special? He can make plays out of nowhere. He can make plays on the run. He can make throws that nobody else can make. None of this was Daboll saying, oh, imagine how good he'll be when he makes plays on schedule. All of the highlights were about the off-schedule ability. And finally having a coach for Cam who seems to not think of his strengths as something that can be put aside while you work on him playing within the system, and more admitting we're going to design the system around his peculiar, unique talents. I think that was probably a pretty big draw, even if I think the Saleh part was a little bit more of a draw. All of that on top, look, there were 21 offensive coordinator vacancies at various points this offseason in the NFL. I went through all of them yesterday just out of curiosity to compare what Daboll actually interviewed for, what teams were looking for candidates similar to Daboll, and what would have made more sense for him than the Titans. And so if you look at the high level vacancies, Kansas City had a vacancy. They went and got somebody incredibly familiar. They went and got Eric Bieniemy, who had been their offensive coordinator before. Doesn't seem like they were going for any other archetype than guy who knows Patrick Mahomes. Fine. Baltimore and Philadelphia, two consistent contenders, had vacancies. They went young first-time offensive play callers in Declan Doyle and Sean Mannion. Daboll did interview in Philadelphia. They went young. Buffalo had a vacancy. Obviously, that's a high-level one. Joe Brady went out and got Pete Carmichael, who is somebody who he'd worked with before in New Orleans, building up that familiarity there. We can go on and on through the list. You guys know what hires were made. Really, the only ones that were fundamentally similar to the hire the Titans made are the Chargers going out and hiring Mike McDaniel. And Daboll did interview for that job. And it's not a surprise that Jim Harbaugh went out and emphasized the coordinator who has run game coordination experience, the great run game coach. Not a surprise that fit better with what the Chargers like to do.
Yeah.
Then the other three jobs that would be comparable to what the Titans did were the Jets hiring Frank Reich, the Cardinals hiring Nathaniel Hackett, and the Giants hiring Matt Nagy. Obviously, Daboll would not have taken the Giants offensive coordinator job. The Jets job didn't open up until after Daboll took the Titans job, and also was a worse job than the Titans.
Those are three very uninspiring hires, by the way, at three organizations that traditionally don't do good things.
Yeah, so my point here is if you're looking at the 5 teams that hired offensive coordinators who were former offensive-minded head coaches, just because to finish the thread, the Cardinals hired Nathaniel Hackett. The Titans are the best of those 5 jobs for what Daboll does. The Chargers are the best job, but they were looking for a coach that fit Jim Harbaugh's run-first persona better, and they found the guy. So, like, if we're just playing the game of which teams wanted to hire somebody, which teams ended up hiring somebody like Brian Daboll, the Titans do make the most sense of the 5 teams that hired somebody like Brian Daboll.
So I get where you're going with that, especially with the McDaniel Harbaugh, keep the football on the ground thing. I guess my first question is, do you think you can, rehab your image isn't necessarily the right phrase. That's not the right way to describe it. But that's sort of what happens when you get fired and then you go back to being a coordinator and then you regain, just like Robert Saleh has. Daboll looked refreshed and happy. That was maybe the best presser I've seen for the Titans. LOL, first one. First ones always look good, though, for the most part. That is a good way to. And Josh has, to some degree, he's staking his ability to get a head coaching job again on Cam. So my question is, can you quote unquote rehab the image? Which is, I don't love that particular phrase, but that's what I'm going to use to describe this scenario. Can you do that more as the coordinator for Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes? Or can you do that more because there's more ground to gain easier in a place like Tennessee with Cam Ward? Because I think the real answer to the question is why Tennessee is, well, you really liked Cam Ward as a head coach. You have a great relationship with apparently the general manager and also the coach, and you've got a lot of upward mobility in terms of offensive production. Like that, to me, that's a no-brainer why he would that. But I could also make the case that, like, going back and being not saying he had these opportunities, but going back and coaching Josh Allen is such a cushy job for him. He already knows how to do it. He's already done it. You could go back and if they were to win a Super Bowl, wouldn't that, or even get to the AFC Championship game, or just get to the Super Bowl, wouldn't that rehab the image even further in terms of his opportunity to win? Like, my point is can't you could argue both cases here. Like,
yeah. Yes and no, because if you go back and coach Josh Allen again, congrats, you're Josh McDaniels. Like, you have gone back 3 times to the same job, and the only place you've ever succeeded is with that one team, with that one quarterback. I've got a list right here of in the last 20 years, every instance of a former head coach going back and taking an offensive coordinator position. Here is going to be the truncated version of that list of guys who then later got another chance to be a head coach. It's Norv Turner, Mike Mularkey, Josh McDaniels, Ken Wisenhunt,
a lot of them here.
Pat Shurmur,
Ooh,
Gary Kubiak.
yeah, I think I know where you're going here with this.
That's it. Like, Gary Kubiak had a great run in his second stint when he was with Denver. Other than that, the rehab your image type guys either didn't rehab their image or rehabbing their image did not help them on the second try. So
no, it didn't help him, but it helped him get the job, though, which is all Titans fans care about.
Sure. And so in that case, the best example of how to do it is do what Ken Wisenhunt did and go coach Phillip Rivers. You've got a future Hall of Famer, go coach him for 1 or 2 years and then go get another job.
Is this a very clear difference in college and pro coaching? Because it feels like coordinators like head coaches who fail become coordinators who go on to become head coaches again have done very well. Lane Kiffin, most notably. And Steve Sarkisian also. Now, again, those have one thing in common, Alabama, following. I think it was before Brian Daboll, actually, right? Is that a college? Is that a pro thing that those guys don't actually get better and do a better job in the second time around?
It's strange because if you look at the best instances of NFL head coaches in the last 30 years, almost all of them have been second-time head coaches. It's just very rare that you take the demotion and then jump back up. Like, Bill Belichick didn't go back, or I guess did Belichick go back to being a DC in between Cleveland? And he must have. He did for a little bit. I think
he was, yeah.
But Andy Reid did not take the jump back.
Pete Carroll didn't.
Pete Carroll didn't. Tony Dungy didn't. Very, very seldom in these last 25 years have the great second-time coaches gone back and taken their lumps as a OC or DC for a year.
Or third-time head coaches like Mike McCarthy.
Correct.
Who's done it twice now, and neither time I don't think he just sat out instead of becoming a coordinator, right?
Yeah, so that is not to say that it can't work. That is not to say that it won't work. Both in the case of Daboll and Robert Saleh, the Titans' actual head coach, who went and took a DC job last year. But for every example of, I'm trying to think of the best version of guy who goes down for a year. There's a lot of examples of Raheem Morris. There are a lot of examples of Hugh Jackson, I guess. There are a lot of those examples.
Todd Bowles?
Yeah, Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles is probably the closest example to it working out, it being a pretty good fit. And if the Titans end up becoming what the Buccaneers are, I don't think people are going to complain in the short term.
In the short term, they're a division contender most years.
Yeah.
So with by the way, the guy who we all comped Cam Ward to, Baker Mayfield.
That's a big we all right there. It was you.
It's mostly just me.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'll stand on that comp. I still stand on it after watching him play for a year. So
yeah. So I think that none of this is to say that Daboll's not doing the image rehab thing. I think he very clearly is staking his image in his ability to develop Cam Ward the way that he developed Josh Allen, albeit they're being different players. But no, historically there is very little precedent in modern football for the image rehab thing being something that works.
And but again, you're saying that works for him and his third team, this next team after the Titans. For it to work, like it works for the Titans, almost no matter what, unless they are so awful.
No, it does. Like the part I didn't.
It is great for the Titans because what will get him rehabbed is performance here and productivity and growth and development here. Even if for 1 year, it doesn't matter if he goes and fails as the whoever.
Yeah, but if we're talking about these 20 offensive coordinators I mentioned, all of them, even the ones that never became a head coach again, their median finish in total offense in year one was like 23rd. So like hiring the big name former head coach as your OC isn't like a guaranteed push toward, it's going to work. Yeah. Most of the time, if you're hiring a new guy, your team's bad. So year one turnarounds are really tough.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, let's get to, I want to get in because you kind of alluded to this in the conversation, analyzing why he came here and why he likes Cam Ward, because that's really more of a conversation around this next chunk of audio where I think this was Terry's question, then TD with a couple follow-ups. It's about a 2-minute clip. It's sort of about all of the things that because again, the first 7.5 minutes of the press conference were exclusively about Cam Ward, with the exception of one little quick, we're looking at free agents or whatever. So here was sort of the follow-ups to this conversation we just had. And again, I just want to put a bow on this. If he goes and gets a head coaching job after 1 year, he will have done his job here, and Titans fans should be happy about that. Yes. So I think a lot of people look at that as a bad thing. I know we've talked about this with Matt LaFleur in the past. I think you can talk about it with Arthur Smith to a lesser degree. But if this is a 1-year stop and the Titans are going to be a 7-win team with an offense ranked 18th in the NFL, he will have done a great job. And Titans fans should be ecstatic about that. And they will be set up for a better position next year at this time than this year. So, all right, here was a lot of his thoughts on Cam Ward specifically.
Something that we're going through right now. We're not there yet schematic wise. I've evaluated all his Washington State tape, all his Miami tape. I've watched the games that he played last year here. That's going to be a work in progress. It's the end of February. We have some time here, but again, I think he can do a lot of things. He's going to have to put the work in, which I know he will, and then we'll do stuff that he feels comfortable with. I think that's important for any quarterback, but particularly for a young quarterback. So we're kind of going through that right now, Terry. Not to avoid your question, but we're just not quite there yet.
For ESPN, your impact on Josh Allen, that was one of the more significant changes and upgrades we saw a quarterback make since coming to the league. What were some of the things you could pull from that experience in 2018, 19, 20, et cetera, to this opportunity to work with Cam?
Yeah, I think every situation is unique. Again, we've had some young quarterbacks previously with obviously Josh and Jackson at New York, but everybody's different. I don't want to just put him into a particular box. I think the most important thing is to first develop the relationship with the young man and then get a feel for how he's seeing the game. That's hard to do right now when you're not able to sit down and talk a lot of football. So I always like to see the game through the quarterback's eyes. And again, there's going to be mistakes out there that I think he's made on tape previous, and he might have a completely different answer. So that communication is really important. I learned that dealing with Josh, dealing with Jackson, but been around some veteran quarterbacks. It's a hard position to play. It's easy to sit back there and say, what the hell did you do that for? But until I can get that communication with him and go through these plays with a fine-tooth comb, iron out the details of it, we're a little bit away from that.
Having watched him, Washington State, Miami, et cetera, and last year, where are you from a mechanic standpoint? Because there was always a lot of talk about his footwork and getting the base better, et cetera.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with Cam. His ability to throw the football, his athleticism. Everybody's a little bit different in their drops. Everybody's a little different with their throwing motion. But I'm excited to work with this young man.
All right, there you go. That was the general analysis of Cam Ward. I'm a guy who is polished enough to give us just enough to try to sift through it all and get answers. Well, not really saying a ton. Of course, no scheme there at all. He used a lot of adjectives to describe Cam Ward. He used young, athletic, accurate, toughness, moxie, smart, his competitive nature, his leadership. Guys gravitate towards him. Talked about his accuracy. He hit everything, every detail about how a quarterback can play. I think what you were getting to first, which is, are we trying to mold Cam to this vision of what we think the quarterback position should be, which I think you have to do to some degree for everybody.
Right.
And you have to build a system that maximizes talent, skills, and abilities, which is being a coach for your roster, and blending those two things together in the right amounts and the right balance, I think is probably the job number one. I do want to ask your quick clarification here because somebody asked this also about Sergeant Bubble says, mentioned yesterday that Daboll and Ward cannot begin their relationship due to the NFL offseason schedule. He talks about April a lot. He talks about how they haven't had a chance to talk scheme. What are the? Can you lay out the rules real fast for communication?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to super misspeak, so I'll be as vague as possible to sound like I know what I'm talking about. they can, if they run into each other in the hallway, they don't have to put their head down and pretend like they don't see each other. Like, they're going to run into each other. They are allowed to be pleasant. They are allowed to be human beings. They just cannot engage in football activity. So, like, Cam can have a playbook, but the coach cannot, like, sit down in a meeting room and teach the playbook until organized team activities begin.
Can he say, hey, I want you to study page 47 on your own time?
If no one catches him, for sure.
Okay.
I truly don't. It's a murky gray area. I don't know.
I was going to say, like, how can he be in the building and the coach be in the building and then not mention a single thing about football?
Yeah, no,
that's impossible.
They are only allowed to ask questions like, been to any good concerts lately and got any recommendations for where I should go grocery shopping. That is what the league allows.
If you go to Sinker's Beverages, if you look at the back right, that's basically where the high point safety will roll in a cover 3 design scheme on 3rd and 4 traditionally against Jacksonville. Like, that seems stupid. Just let them work. They're professionals. Anyway, I know. NFLPA. I got it.
What were we talking about?
I don't know. The catering the scheme.
Yeah.
To design it, like being adaptable, basically, right? You need the quarterback to adapt a little bit, but you have to be very adaptable to your quarterback. And I think striking the right balance is sort of what every coordinator is looking to do.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've written about this so many times because people keep saying it, but have you noticed how often past coaches and current coaches have made the Clark Kent Superman analogy with Cam? Like, when does
come up? Yeah.
When does he need to put on the cape?
Yeah.
When does he not need to have the cape on? That sort of thing. It seems like if we're remembering the Bo Hardigree line from, I believe, New Year's Day, where he says, "We know he can be Superman. Sometimes I need him to be Clark Kent." If we're using that as the baseline, Salah's thing was, I need to remind him that he doesn't need to be Superman all that often. We need to build a team where he doesn't have to be Superman until he's ready to be Superman. And Daboll's analogy was much more, we need to be fine that sometimes he's Superman. Like, it's
a subtle difference, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like, there is no part of Daboll's answer, like when Teron asks about footwork, there is no part that's like, oh yeah, we got to clean this up, or oh, there are some concerns. I'm fine with it.
There's not a single negative real word about anything. Now, is that posturing? Maybe.
Yeah, it could change. It could change. We could get here in April and Cam could be like, oh, he twitched my release. He tweaked my footwork. Like, that could happen. But for now, it does seem like the company line is going to be, play football the way you're going to play football. I'm going to put you in position to succeed.
Yeah.
And if he does, we have some people in the comments, Mr. Jared Stillman and his company, advocating if that works, just put the guy in charge. And like, I understand that impulse. I also remember, hey Jared, I also remember Freddie Kitchens. So I'm a little wary of that impulse, but I get it. Like,
funny thing, who got Brian Daboll here? Robert Saleh. Anyway, carry on.
Let's not make the Borgonzi Brinker comparison there. Look, I think that I've said so many times, if the Titans are going to reach their absolute peak as a franchise, it's going to be because Cam Ward ends up as good as the Titans want Cam Ward to be. So for as much as this is a team run by a defensive coach, an organization that is building around defensive principles, if Cam's good, if Cam's great, this regime is going to succeed. And so, you got to give Daboll the autonomy to be the coach you hired him to be and see if that's the guy who's going to harness it all.
So I'm kind of like, here's the other thing. So one of the things Brian Callahan said to us at the Combine last year was, I think it was at the Combine, where he talked about how he almost viewed it as a positive that players transfer a lot. So go with me on this journey, which I know you appreciate sometimes. He talked a lot about how there can be a benefit to Cam Ward's transferring 3 times, right? Incarnate Word, Washington State, Miami, having to endear himself quickly to a new locker room, adapt to a new group of people, a new culture, a new coaching staff, a new scheme. He is going to be on, I think, like his 6th scheme, 6th coordinator in like 6 years, something like that, right? Like Incarnate Word, Washington State. I think he had 2 maybe years. Was it 2 years at Washington State?
Yeah.
And then a new coordinator at Miami, and then a new coordinator last year, and then a new coordinator this year. And I think ultimately that is a new thing in sports, in football in particular, that you have to be able to manage adaptability, whether it's the portal or transitioning to the NFL or just the churn on a NFL offensive staff. It's going to be a part of your career as a quarterback. Like, how many different quarterbacks or how many different coordinators do all the great quarterbacks have? Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning. They've all had dozens of coordinators. So you have to kind of be used to that, and I think Cam Ward is used to that. But what I think makes this year so important, and why Daboll coming this year to me being so important, is that this is a formative year for Cam Ward, that if he can figure himself out, when to be Superman, when not to be, if he can learn from a coordinator that builds a system around him, and Daboll goes on and leaves after this year to go be a head coach, that the things he will develop in himself this year are the things that will last through all of the coordinator changes. And so I think, he's more adaptable to the change than previous generations because of the transferring. Callahan alluded to that last time. And I think you've got a guy with so much experience and so many different skills and so much NFL high-level experience that I think this is a perfect time for him to get that coaching. And hopefully it just sort of sticks, and he goes from an 82 to a 91, and then he's the one who takes himself higher than that. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I just to the last point, I think that getting to 82 would be quite an achievement this year.
77 is he a 77 right now? I think he's
73, 74.
I think he's better than 73. But continue.
I think like the question is, are we basing this off of the talent that we see, the potential that we see, or are we basing this off of what actually happened when the games happened? And you can handicap it a lot of ways. You can point out the struggles with losing your head coach 6 games into your career, having your play caller change on you 3 games into your career. We could talk about the trades and the injuries that made it so he was kind of playing by himself in the second half of the season and getting better while, for the large part, playing by himself. But among qualified passers last year, Cam Ward was, I believe, 39th in passer rating.
Yeah, not good. Not good statistically. No.
There are 32 teams in the NFL. Just as a reminder, the average team had a better quarterback than Cam Ward. That is not to say that he will always be that guy. But we have to remember when we're talking about him, his baseline heading into year 2 is a lot different than the baseline of Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams or Joe Burrow or any of these other number 1 picks that were maybe the 20th best quarterback in the NFL as rookies. Cam was one of the worst. And that's 16, 17 game sample rather than the 6 game sample toward the end of the year where he looked good. So if we're only looking at that, sure, maybe we're starting at 79, 80, 81. But he's totally restarting. He's rehabbing a shoulder injury.
No, I agree.
There is a lot that is going to have to take a step forward for Cam to be in the discussion of, like, look, for as much as we joke about the development of Josh Allen and what his starting point was, if you pull up the side-by-side of Josh Allen's rookie year compared to Cam's rookie year, Allen's was honestly not worse.
No.
And so there is a lot of growth that needs to happen here. And I do think Daboll is the right kind of coach to provide that kind of growth. And I am not minimizing that. But let's not be like, oh, Cam's 1 season away from that top 10. Yeah. He's got to get into the top 20 first.
Yeah. Stillman, you once again missed my point and are proving my point. Young Manning, young Brady, young Rodgers all had 1 OC. I should have clarified. That was 20 plus years ago when there were coordinators for longer tenures. And they benefited from having those guys at a younger age. I'm saying once you've established, you're going to churn coordinators. And today in 2026, coordinators churn a lot more and quarterbacks transfer a lot more. Again, my point was Brian Callahan talking about quarterbacks transferring, creating an adaptable gene in a quarterback that can adapt to new schemes in locker rooms and environments and cultures. And that is a new thing for a lot of younger players because of the transfer rules in college football. And I think we don't have coordinators for 4 years or 5 years or 6 years anymore in the NFL in general. And so even all the greatest quarterbacks at the back halves of their careers, while they had established themselves through some stability, that does not exist anymore. And those guys had to deal with a bunch of changing coordinators throughout the end of their career. So I hope I want to make sure I'm clarifying that it's a change in football that has forced quarterbacks to be more adaptable, quicker. Cam has that gene, but I think right now he needs the foundational work to build on to sort of set himself up to then where he becomes the development driving force. If that makes sense. I'm trying to,
like, somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but off the top of my head, I'm fairly certain the longest tenured play calling offensive coordinator in the NFL right now is Josh McDaniels, who was hired last year.
You said there were 21 changes. Like,
there were 21. The two longest tenured offensive coordinators in the NFL are Wes Phillips and Adam Stenavich, neither of whom call plays in Green Bay and Minnesota. And they were hired in 2022. Like, that's the when Brian Callahan was hired by the Titans, he was the longest tenured offensive coordinator in the NFL. And he'd been there.
He didn't call plays.
He didn't call plays. And I believe he'd been there 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very difficult to have a long run as an offensive coordinator these days.
Caleb says, late to the show, but shout out to me. That's Braden for paying homage to the Jorts, which is, of course, my Nashville SC. It's soccer season. Everyone in. This is a good question from Ed. Is there really substantial proof that Cam can be successful without freelancing? That is hard to quantify at Miami because there's way more freelancing in college than there is in the NFL. That's a good question. I mean, I think
the simple answer is no. There is not substantial proof. It's not that you're asking the wrong question. It's that I'm a little bit of a annoying person who I'm going to answer your question with a question. To me, the question isn't, is there proof that he can be successful without freelancing? The question is, how long can an NFL quarterback be successful when they are freelancers? Like, can an NFL quarterback be successful out of structure if the entire game plan is built on go play schoolyard ball, go play out of structure?
Brett Favre, Baker Mayfield to some degree.
Yeah, the Mahomes to an extent, but I would say Mahomes
still a lot of structure.
Yeah, rapidly changed his strategies and philosophies after about 2 years, and arguably got better once he started playing more in structure. Mm-hmm. Can it be sustained? Potentially. But that's the question to me more. Because if you're looking for substantial proof of anything, the only thing that we really have proof of is that this dude was a really good college quarterback who, let's face it, looked better on the stat sheet than the win column for his 5 years of college football. And now he got to the pros.
Against a fairly low level of competition.
Yes. And now he got to the pros, and he didn't, as a rookie, look very good on the stat sheet or the win column. But he's very young, and he didn't have much around him.
Yeah. It's all fair. It all seems like facts. Sometimes you need a mentor in addition to a coach, like Eddie did with Derrick Henry when he pulled him aside, and then Derrick Henry sort of realized his potential after that. Not to give Eddie all of the credit, but no, I don't disagree with your point, Rob, on that. And I think ultimately that push and pull of what we're talking about when it's essentially the freelancing is the Clark Kent Superman thing. The question is maybe this is the better question. How much Superman can you play? How often can you play like Superman in structure?
Yes.
And I think that's ultimately the question is, can you still be Superman in a phone booth, for lack of a better term? All right. So I think that's enough for the offense. I was looking at the two press conferences on the Titans YouTube page right before we came on. It's about a 7-to-1 ratio of views. Daboll with about 9,000 views. Gus Bradley with about 2. So 10,000 to 2, something like that. I want to get to Gus real fast because I thought there was some interesting stuff from him about his relationship with Robert Saleh and how the structure of the defense is going to unfold week of installed game day, etc. I thought that was really interesting. I think those are both your questions, actually. But first, of course, Sinkers Beverages, great local business here in Nashville. Make sure you support them. You can search Uber Eats if you are watching the Olympics, if you're watching the U.S. men's hockey team on Friday and Sunday, hopefully Sunday. You got the women's gold medal match today against Canada. If you are watching Nashville SC on Saturday night, you can have the booze delivered directly to your house. You don't have to miss a minute of all of your favorite sports. They will deliver the beer, they'll deliver the bourbon, they'll deliver the wine, whatever it is, the ready to drinks, the cocktails, the mocktails, the non-alc beer, the THC bevies. They'll bring it all to your house for you. Just search Uber Eats for Sinkers Beverages. And if you're gonna go out, make sure you go to one of our local tap rooms, East Nashville Beer Works in East Nashville and out in Wilson County, in between Lebanon and Mount Juliet. You got Tennessee Brew Works downtown. Great place to pregame. And, of course, you've got Yazoo Brewing Company up on the river, a very relaxing place to go take the kids, have a great beer, overlook the Cumberland River. The weather's getting nicer. Go spend some time in community, have a couple of beers in moderation at a local tap room. Go support your good local businesses. And you can get all of those beers that I just mentioned. You can get all of those at Sinkers Beverages. Rob says quarterback freelancing comes down to his connection with his receivers. If they're on the same page and see things the same and know where to get and where the quarterback will be looking. Stoney, East Nashville Beer Works has a low-key banger pulled pork sandwich. There you go. And Stoney lives out there near the big East Nashville Beer Works.
What's his address? Tell everybody.
Sorry to dox you, Stoney. But he's out there a lot. And it's, there's a beer desert out there. And East Nashville Beer Works has got the Sipper and they got the Honey Blonde. They got the Miro Miel. They got all kinds of good stuff out there. So O side of the ball runs out of patience with young quarterbacks, and D's take advantage of the constant churn. I think that's about right. Okay, so the interesting point I thought Gus Bradley was asked, I think you asked it and maybe some others kind of followed up, but it was asked about sort of how the relationship will work and why did he want to come here and be a coordinator without having the ability to call plays. And what he described, in my opinion, was how their relationship worked is why he wanted to come here, and how they interacted in the past, how integrated maybe the two minds and visions and schemes were all interwoven during the week, but also on game day, where I know Titans fans don't want to hear this word, but it was collaborative. The collaboration between the two, even in the moment in the game, seemed like why this is the right guy for me. I want to come work for him, even though I'm not getting to call plays. Yeah,
it was really interesting hearing Bradley talk about Salah's kind of big picture brain and the ability to blue sky everything and see the game for the 60 minutes that it is. And Bradley being more the kind of coach that can see moment to moment what's going on, what needs to happen in this exact situation, what I need to tell players to, keep the play-by-play going while Salah's looking at the drive-by-drive, quarter-by-quarter, half-by-half perspective. I think that's a cool relationship. I think that's a different spin on maybe what we heard from Callahan and Holtz in the past, or maybe what we heard from Vrabel and Bowen in the past. When you have a head coach who is heavily involved on game day or heavily involved with game planning and play calling, whatever it is, there are always going to be the questions of, well, what is the underling doing? I think Bradley did a pretty good job of explaining what his role is going to be. There are still going to be questions about, well, what's he doing? But I do think that if you think of Bradley as the minutia guy and you think of Saleh as the big idea guy, that's a good divide of responsibility.
Could you just call it strategy and tactics?
Sure. I think that might take some explaining, but yes.
Well, hopefully humans in 2026 still know what a strategy is and what a tactic is. I hope I don't have to explain that to people. I wrote down big picture and then individual perspective is what I wrote down, because because then he was asked about edge rushers, right? And we could talk about how they want one. He wants one guy who's big and burly and can be a pass rusher outside on first and second down, but then he's going to slide in on third down. And the other edge rusher needs to be sort of a true outside pass rusher, etc. Who knows what that means? From like an NFL draft, people were, that means they love this guy and that guy. Like, no, it doesn't. To me, it's about because the thing I remember about Robert Saleh's introductory press conference about defense and calling plays was sort of like, I know what amount of work it took for a player to be in this position. And if I'm going to ask him to go execute this thing he's busted his tail on, I need to I need to be more connected with that decision and with that player. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to explain why he wanted to be play caller. Sometimes it's just you need to be in control because you think you can do the best job calling plays. But I liked his his explanation on that. And I feel like this is where Gus Bradley probably is helping with those sorts of that sort of relationship. It's hey, we're getting beat. The edge rusher or the outside linebacker on this play in this formation in this situation is not able to handle this thing. We need to adjust that. Meanwhile, Saleh's up here going big picture strategy. I guess that's how I would say.
And we also have to acknowledge the weird mental bias that we as football fans have that I'll call the Madden bias of like 95% of a coordinator's responsibilities happen between Monday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Even if that coordinator is the play caller.
Head coach too, by the way.
Yeah. 95% of a coach's responsibilities happen between Monday and Saturday. So if you are the play caller, I'll liken it to Madden. That's why I call it the Madden bias. There is a difference between being the person who picks the play that will be run and being the person who draws the playbook. When you open up a game of Madden, you don't have to start by spending 6 days designing what plays will be in your playbook for this game. You are just given a playbook and you pick the plays that you want to run in any given moment. If Bradley is involved with the tactics, he is going to very much be involved with individual game plans day after day, Monday through Saturday. That does not mean he will be the one relaying that call to Cody Barton or Cedric Gray or whoever has the green dot next year. But it does mean that he's not just going to be Robert Saleh's friend. In the same way that last year, Nick Holtz was not just Brian Callahan's friend. Yeah. These guys do have jobs, and I can't believe that I have to defend the concept of millionaire NFL head coach having a job. But we have to remember that football has a lot more going on than just Sunday.
Yeah. I think, and I can't remember who said it in the comments earlier, but this feels, and it's not that I don't want to make sure this is not Denard Wilson, Nick Holtz, and Brian Callahan didn't feel like adults. That's not what this is at all. They're very fine people. But these feel like football professionals. And but I feel that throughout the entire organization. And maybe it's just because, hey, hope springs eternal. We're in draft season. We've got a new coaching staff. Everything feels this, everything feels that, and everybody's in the honeymoon phase, and everybody's excited about this, and fans are fired up, and I think that's all fair. I think that's all good, smart, okay fandom. But it does feel like from Borgonzi down through the entire staff that there is a sort of next level of professionalism and adulthood that I want to. And there's probably other better adjectives that writers could have for this, but that's the feeling I get. And I don't know how much that translates to wins. I was on with Stillman actually arguing with him on his show last week, and he was like, I want a number, Braden, I want a number. And I'm like, the number, as I've always said in every level of football, the number's not as important as how it looks. If you get to 7 wins, but you win like you did against Arizona last year, and you're basically gifted victories and you have to come from behind every time, that's different than if you just go out and play a great football game and beat somebody because you were better prepared and you executed better. So I think 6 or 7 or 8 wins is the ballpark to where they need to get. I think they can do that, but I think it ultimately comes down to what you said, which is that Cam Ward has to sort of realize his potential. And I do think I think the whole entire building is in a far better place today than it was at this time last year.
Oh, you're probably right about that. I would give kudos to the way that the Titans have reshaped what people think the Titans are in a 14, 15-month period. I think that perception is high. I think that the Titans have done some image rehab. I think that if what the coaches are saying about the leash they have is to be believed, that there's a lot of reason to think the Titans can go make some moves and reconfigure the roster and all that stuff. But yeah, it's putting a lot of confidence in people saying that this is going great when we have no tangible results that anything great has happened yet.
Aside from the fact that all these guys have lots of data on their resume where the previous staff did not. Here's what I would say, though. There's only one way to put the cherry on top, to just chef's kiss the entire image rebrand, and that's with new uniforms and a logo in a new stadium. Just want to point that out. Also, something that could happen at the NFL draft, right? You hold up the new unis right there at the NFL draft. Come on across, David Bailey. Here's your new Oilers uniform. We shall see what happens in that ballpark. Do you got any logo gate takes you want to throw out here at in the 60th minute of the show?
At Tennessean.com, go check out some reporting I've done on this. Look, I'm not being cryptic because I am withholding. I'm being cryptic because what I'm withholding is incredibly boring. The story of how that leak happened on Saturday is so administratively boring that it is not worth giving you guys you don't care.
So there's a whole new logo and uniform coming, in your opinion?
All I'm saying is it is entirely possible that the product you guys saw never actually existed in the first place.
I know.
It's incredibly, incredibly boring. That web design and back-end matrix stuff.
I know. Content management systems.
You guys, nobody should care about this. But yeah, Tennessean.com.
There'll be some subtle changes. That's my thought. Yeah. So, okay, guys, thank you so much for hanging out and for listening. Please share the show. Please tell somebody about a football show and about all the other great 440 Sports products. Lots of experience in the building. We saw that on display with both coordinators being introduced. Sinker's Beverages, the most experienced and award-winning liquor store in Tennessee, in Middle Tennessee, I should say. They've got 5-time Liquor Store of the Year and the Craft Beer Retailer Fridge of the Year. And you can get inside of that craft beer fridge that's award-winning. You can get East Nashville Beer Works. You can get Yazoo Brewing Company, the OG local brew house in this city. And you can get Tennessee Brew Works, the best meal you will ever have at a brew house, at a tap room. Go check them out. We do appreciate all of your support, and so do they. So go support those guys. And again, as CT Hiker says, I appreciate the analysis and reporting. There you go. There you go. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Go USA. Go Nashville SC. And we'll talk to you guys on Monday. Thanks, Nick. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.